When the earth trembles, a wake-up call from the source. When the ground quakes beneath our feet, when raging waters swallow entire villages, when the skies turn violent and wildfires consume ancient forests, humanity pauses, staring in fear, searching for answers. Why? Why does the world become so unforgiving? Natural disaster. These words do more than describe catastrophe. They stir something deep within us, a sense of helplessness, a profound vulnerability in the face of nature's immense power. In those fleeting moments, everything we cling to, wealth, status, security, reveals its impermanence, its fragile illusion. And yet, within that very moment of darkness, the light of the Dharma begins to shine, not to mystify, but to illuminate the truth. The Buddha did not teach that natural disasters are divine punishment. Nor did he say they occur at random. He taught that all phenomena, whether gentle or destructive, arise from causes and conditions, shaped by karma, and governed by the law of impermanence. The earth does not rage without cause. Nature does not destroy without meaning. Everything is interconnected, our thoughts, our actions, and the world we inhabit are woven into one seamless web. If we truly listen, we may find that even in the thunder of a storm, there lies a whisper of awakening. This article will guide you through a Buddhist perspective on natural disasters, not merely to understand why the earth shakes, but to reflect on how we live, with ourselves, with others, and with the planet that sustains us. Because sometimes, disasters don't just destroy. They awaken. Part 1, Impermanence, the ever-shifting ground beneath us. The earth shifts. The winds howl. The waters rise and fall. Fire consumes. To most, these are signs of chaos. To a practitioner of the Dharma, they are reminders of a deeper truth: nothing lasts. In Buddhism, impermanence, anicca, is not merely a concept. It is the very fabric of existence. Every leaf that falls, every breath we take, every mountain that erodes over time, silently speaks this truth: all conditioned things are in a constant state of change. Natural disasters, in their raw and terrifying form, shatter the illusion of permanence we so desperately cling to. We build homes as if they will stand forever, store wealth as if we can hold it beyond death, and form identities as if they are solid and fixed. Then one storm comes, and everything crumbles. All compounded things are impermanent. When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. Dhammapada, verse 277. When we fail to recognize impermanence, suffering deepens. We grieve not just the loss, but the loss of what we thought was ours, what we believed would always be there. But the Buddha invites us not to resist impermanence, but to understand it, to live with it, and ultimately, to be freed by it. A mirror for our attachments. Natural disasters reflect the very attachments that bind us: attachment to material possessions, to comfort, to control. When a flood sweeps away our home, what truly hurts is not just the house, but the attachment to the life we built inside it. When fire takes a forest, we mourn not only the trees, but the memories, the identity, the sense of self we've tied to that place. Yet in this stripping away, there is also space. Space to see clearly. Space to ask, what remains when all is gone? And in that silence, a deeper truth may arise: who we truly are is not the things we own, but the awareness that experiences them. The invitation of impermanence. Natural disasters are powerful forces, but they are not malevolent. They are simply natural, unfolding within the grand cycle of creation and destruction. They invite us to wake up. To stop sleepwalking through life. To cherish what we have, because it will not last. To love people deeply, because time is not promised. Impermanence, when seen clearly, does not lead to fear. It leads to freedom. Because once we release the need for things to stay the same, we begin to live fully in the moment. Every sunrise becomes a miracle. Every embrace becomes sacred. Part 2, Collective Karma, Seeds of Suffering or Seeds of Harmony. When a single person experiences misfortune, we often ask, what did they do to deserve this? But when an entire village is swallowed by a flood, when wildfires ravage thousands of acres of forest, or when famine affects entire nations, then the question deepens. Why them? Why now? In Buddhism, there is an answer, not rooted in blame, but in understanding. It is the teaching of collective karma, samakarma, the shared consequences of actions created not just by one individual, but by a community, a society, even a species. What we do together, we face together. The Buddha taught that karma is not fate. It is cause and effect. And just as individuals create karma through their actions, groups of people, villages, nations, humanity as a whole, also generate shared karmic momentum. When a community collectively harms the environment, exploits resources without mindfulness, or turns a blind eye to suffering, it plants seeds. Over time, those seeds ripen. If beings act with a corrupted mind, suffering follows. If with a pure mind, happiness follows. Dhammapada. The earth reflects our minds. The world we see around us is not separate from us. It is a mirror of our collective consciousness. When greed drives our industries, when convenience outweighs compassion, when the killing of animals becomes normalized, when forests are seen only as commodities, we are not just damaging the planet. We are damaging ourselves. Natural disasters, then, can be seen not as divine punishments, but as echoes of the disharmony we've created. They are the natural response of a system thrown out of balance. Just as the body responds with fever to infection, the earth responds with turbulence to exploitation. Karma is not blame, it's a call to awareness. It is crucial to understand, karma is not about guilt. No child deserves to suffer in a flood. No innocent farmer deserves drought. Karma is far more nuanced. The suffering of the innocent is not proof of injustice, but a reflection of how deeply interconnected we all are. We rise and fall together. Instead of asking, who is to blame? Buddhism encourages us to ask, what can we learn? How can we change? Because if karma is created through action, then new karma, good, healing karma, can also be created. And the seeds of future peace can be planted right now. A world we create, together. Imagine a world where compassion is prioritized over profit. Where humans live not above nature, but with it. Where mindfulness guides our choices, what we eat, what we consume, how we treat the earth. In such a world, the collective karma we sow would no longer be one of disaster, but of harmony. The Buddha did not ask us to fear karma. He asked us to be mindful of it, to see clearly that every action matters, not just for ourselves, but for all beings. Part 3, Compassion in Crisis, the Bodhisattva Response to Disaster. In times of disaster, when the world is covered in ash, mud, or water, when homes are lost, families torn apart, and hope seems to fade, many turn inward in fear or despair. But in such moments, the Bodhisattva turns outward. The fire of suffering awakens the heart. The Bodhisattva, the awakened being who chooses to stay in the world to serve all sentient beings, does not seek comfort in isolation or transcendence when others suffer. Instead, their vow is clear. As long as there is even one being drowning in sorrow, I will not enter nirvana. Natural disasters, then, are not interruptions of the spiritual path. They are the path itself. They reveal the rawness of impermanence, the depth of collective pain, and the urgency of compassion. They offer the Bodhisattva a sacred opportunity to put love into action. The true meaning of help. In Buddhism, compassion, karu, is not pity. It is not born of superiority or distance. It is the natural response of an awakened heart. When one sees suffering clearly, one acts. When disaster strikes, compassion may take many forms. A bowl of rice handed to a hungry stranger. A warm blanket wrapped around a crying child. A calm voice soothing the panic of others. Or simply, presence, a silent, grounded presence that says, you are not alone. These actions may seem small in the face of vast destruction. But in Buddhism, even the smallest act done with pure intention carries infinite value. As the Buddha said, drop by drop is the water pot filled. Likewise, the wise one, gathering it little by little, fills himself with good. Compassion is courage. To walk into disaster is not easy. To serve amid chaos requires more than kindness, it requires courage. The courage to sit with pain without turning away. The courage to be present when the heart wants to flee. The courage to love even when the world feels broken. This is the Bodhisattva spirit. Not reserved for saints or monks, but for anyone who chooses love over fear, service over despair. Disasters reveal the Bodhisattva within us all. When the earth shakes, something else stirs beneath the surface, our shared humanity. In the ruins of cities, strangers become family. In the face of tragedy, kindness becomes instinct. Even those who have never heard the word Dharma begin to act like bodhisattvas, risking their lives for others, offering their last piece of bread, holding space for those who grieve. This is not coincidence. It is a truth the Buddha saw clearly. Within each of us is the seed of awakening, and sometimes it is hardship that causes it to bloom. Part 4, Returning to Harmony, Healing Our Relationship with Nature. Somewhere along the path of modern progress, humanity forgot something essential. We do not live on the earth. We live with it. We are not above rivers, forests, mountains, or clouds. We are made of them. Yet, in our rush to conquer, own, and control nature, we began to treat the world as resource, not relationship. The soil became a commodity. The trees became profit. The animals became product. And in doing so, we severed a sacred bond. The Dharma sees no separation. In the eyes of the Dharma, interdependence, paikasamupta, is the ultimate truth. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything arises in dependence on everything else. The breath in your lungs was once the breath of trees. The water in your blood once flowed through mountain streams. The food that sustains you was nurtured by sun and soil. To harm the earth, then, is to harm ourselves. To heal the earth is to begin healing what's broken within us. This body, too, is earth. This mind, too, is sky. Zen saying. The violence of disconnection. Natural disasters are not caused solely by ecological imbalances. They are intensified by the spiritual disconnection between humans and the natural world. When we drain rivers without reverence, the land responds. When we poison air and water in pursuit of comfort, the climate shifts. When we destroy forests and silence the voices of animals, imbalance arises, not just in nature, but in our own hearts. Because deep down, we know, this is not how we are meant to live. Returning to right relationship. In Buddhism, the path is not about renouncing the world, but about living in right relationship with it. This includes our relationship with nature. Right relationship means consuming mindfully, taking only what is needed. Walking gently, minimizing harm with every step. Protecting life, recognizing the Buddha nature in all beings, human and non-human alike. Offering gratitude, seeing every drop of rain, every gust of wind, every meal as a blessing. To live this way is not only ecological, it is liberating. Because it frees us from the illusion of control and reintroduces us to something far more beautiful, belonging. The earth is a living sutra. What if we read the earth like we read sacred texts? The trees whisper impermanence. The mountains embody stillness. The rivers teach flow and surrender. The seasons speak of death and rebirth. Every part of nature is a living Dharma, constantly teaching us, if only we learn to listen again. Part 5, Awakening Through Disaster, What the Earth is Teaching Us. Disasters come suddenly. They shatter routines. Silence illusions. Strip away all that is false. But beneath the rubble, beyond the sorrow, there is something else waiting. An invitation to awaken. What if this is not the end? To the ordinary mind, disaster seems like the end of safety, of normal life, sometimes even of hope. But to the awakened mind, it can be the beginning of clarity, compassion, and transformation. In the midst of chaos, all that is non-essential falls away. The walls we build between ourselves collapse. The truths we hide from come into the light. The heart, exposed and raw, begins to feel again. We remember what truly matters. Not possessions, but presence. Not status, but kindness. Not control, but connection. Suffering is the gate to insight. The Buddha never promised a life without suffering. Instead, he offered a path through suffering to wisdom, peace, and liberation. Natural disasters magnify the suffering of the world, but they also magnify the urgency of the path. They ask us, how will you live now? Not later, not someday, now. Because the next moment is never guaranteed. And the truth is, it never was. The earth is teacher, not enemy. Perhaps the earth is not against us. Perhaps it is teaching us, fiercely, urgently, compassionately. It teaches impermanence through flood and fire. It teaches interconnection through collective grief. It teaches compassion through crisis. And it teaches humility by reminding us we are not in control, but we are responsible. These are not punishments. These are Dharma lessons, written not on scrolls, but in soil and storm, in silence and sorrow. A new kind of refuge. In Buddhism, we take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. But perhaps, in this age, we must also take refuge in the earth. Not to escape, but to care. Not to possess, but to protect. Not to fear, but to love. True refuge is not found in walls, wealth, or certainty. It is found in the heart that knows how to stay open, even when everything else falls apart. Final reflection, the real earthquake. The real earthquake is not the one that shakes the land. It is the one that shakes us awake. And maybe, just maybe, that is why it came. To remind us that this life is precious. That this planet is sacred. And that this moment, this fragile, fleeting moment, is our chance to love more deeply, live more wisely, and walk more gently on this earth. Conclusion, the storm that awakens the soul. The winds may rage, the earth may crack, the waters may rise, but perhaps the greatest shift happens not around us, but within us. Natural disasters tear down more than just buildings. They dismantle illusions. They strip us of the false securities we've clung to for too long. And in the rawness that remains, something quietly begins to stir, the call to live differently, to love more deeply, and to walk this earth with gentler steps. Buddhism does not offer easy answers to suffering. But it offers a lamp, a way of seeing. And through that lens, we begin to understand. The flood is not just water. The fire is not just heat. The earthquake is not just movement. They are messengers. They are mirrors. They are teachers. In every falling tree, we hear the echo of impermanence. In every act of compassion, we see the face of a Bodhisattva. In every attempt to rebuild, we witness the resilience of the human spirit. And in the silence after the storm, we may finally hear the question that matters most. How will you live now? The answer is yours to choose. But let it be guided by wisdom. Let it be softened by compassion. Let it be rooted in interbeing, with all sentient life, and with this sacred earth we call home. May the storm awaken you, not to fear, but to presence. Not to despair, but to Dharma. Not to endings, but to the beginning of a wiser way to live.